On his return, he sorted out his specimens and sent them off to relevant experts so that each could be identified and classified. Most of the mammal bones and fossils he sent to Richard Owen. Owen was one of the most brilliant zoologists of his time. He was the first to recognize dinosaurs, and indeed had invented their very name. And he would later become the creator and first director of the Natural History Museum in London. Many of the specimens that Darwin collected are still preserved and treasured here, among the 70 million other specimens housed in the museum that Owen founded. And here is one of them. It's obviously the lower jaw of some great animal, and when Darwin discovered it, it had bits of skin and hair attached to it, so that at first it was thought were the remains of some unknown living species. But now we know that it is a species that was extinct for some 10,000 years, a giant ground sloth. Owen examined it in great detail and eventually described it and gave it the name of Mylodon darwinii in honor of its discoverer. But that mutual respect between two great men of science was not to last. Soon after his return from his voyage, Darwin made his home here in Down House in Kent. Here he wrote an account of his travels and worked on detailed scientific treatises about corals and barnacles and the geology and fossils of South America. But he also pondered deeply on what he had seen in the Galapagos and elsewhere. Maybe species were not fixed. Every day, he took a walk in this small spinney that he had planted at the end of his garden. And it was here that he came to ponder on the problems of natural history, including that mystery of mysteries: how could one species turn into another? He noted that most, if not all, animals produce many more young than live to breed themselves. This female blue tit, for example, may well lay a dozen eggs a year, perhaps 50 or so in her lifetime. Yet only 2 of her chicks need to survive and breed themselves to maintain the numbers of the blue tit population. Those survivors, of course, are likely to be the healthiest and best suited to their particular environment. Their characteristics are then inherited, so perhaps over many generations, and particularly if there are environmental changes, species may well change. Only the fittest survive, and that was the key. He called the process natural selection. That would explain the differences that he had noted in the finches that he had brought back from the Galapagos. They were very similar except for their beaks. This one has a very thin, delicate beak which it uses to catch insects. This one, on the other hand, which came from an environment where there were a lot of nuts, has a big, heavy beak which enables it to crack them. So maybe over the vastness of geological time, and particularly if species were invading new environments, those changes would amount to very radical changes indeed. Darwin drew a sketch in one of his notebooks to illustrate his idea. showing how a single ancestral species might give rise to several different ones. And then wrote above it a tentative, "I think."